Thank you. Thank you for being here today. And thank you, Chair. Revisiting your support for solar on the basis that you say it's the cheapest form of electricity generation in history, can you please elaborate on what you base that?
Senator, it was the International Energy Agency that made that statement. It said in the right conditions, I believe, so not everywhere, but in the right solar conditions, solar energy is the cheapest form of energy in history, I think they said.
Okay. What are the right conditions?
Sunshine.
Sunshine. How much?
Well, it varies, Senator. So Australia's got incredibly good sunshine. Obviously, parts of Europe have less. I think Germany would be about half of Australia's solar installation over the course of the year. Depends where you are on the planet.
And of course it doesn't shine at night.
Not yet, Senator.
So it requires firming, it requires batteries, it requires backup, it requires, and on rainy days, cloudy days, it requires some other source of power, especially if you have 2 or 3 days or more in a row.
Senator, you're correct. It requires transmission systems and it requires firming in the form of batteries and pumped hydro, for example.
And it destroys a lot of land from agriculture, takes up rainforests, takes up a lot of environmental land as well.
Senator, I wouldn't characterise it like that. I think that there's plenty of land that's available for solar that is doesn't have those issues that you just mentioned, and in fact many of the solar farms these days can coexist quite comfortably with agriculture, sheep grazing and cattle, for example.
Mr Miller, why are so many people becoming upset now that the regions are being smashed with solar panels and transmission lines?
Senator Roberts, the official may find it easier to answer your question if it doesn't have quite as much emotive language in it. For example, I don't think we would accept the characterisation as you've described it, but there are developments proceeding and it is important in regional communities, and the government considers it's extremely important that we are engaging with those communities to address concerns. And you'll see state governments as well, I think, thinking about how to obtain the maximum benefit for regional communities where renewable facilities are installed.
So I'm just using that word smashed. I'm using words that my constituents are telling us. Constituents all the way from Victoria, New South Wales, southern Queensland, central Queensland, northern Queensland, talking about lifestyles, talking about human habitat, talking about the natural environment, talking about agriculture being smashed. So that's why I use it. So, Mr Miller, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm led to believe that you said your support of solar is to support a giant iron and renewable steel manufacturing capability. Is that correct?
Well, Senator, if we can get solar to lower costs than it is today even, then we can produce energy very cheaply and we can use that renewable electricity to power heavy industrial processes like green iron, which will be very energy intensive. Well, it is energy intensive, but it will be so when it's powered by renewable energy too. So yes, that is correct.
So the key word was your first word, if.
Excuse me?
The key word was your first word, if.
Is that a question,
Yeah,
Senator Roberts?
it is in itself, because
statement.
I'd like to know what are the uncertainties between. Well, for a start, can you please tell me anywhere in the world where anyone has successfully run a continuing commercial steel mill off solar?
Senator, it's an emerging technology, so you can't expect that exists right now. We do know that it is technically possible to produce green iron from electrolysis into hydrogen and hydrogen into the reduction process for converting iron ore into green iron. There are many people working on this in the world, and in Australia we should be concerned about this and working on it too, given our stature as the largest producer of iron ore and the largest exporter of iron ore. So it's a big opportunity for Australia, but it's early days. It's going to take many, many years before this is a commercial proposition.
My understanding is that green steel at the moment is very brittle and inferior quality and not acceptable. So let me move on to the next question. I think it's clear that solar might be cheap at midday when there's an oversupply and they have to pay people to pick up the demand. But the fact is there are huge additional costs in firming, transmission and storage to make that power available when we actually need it at peak times. So no one, as I understand it, is really looking at this, but the last time AEMO did in 2016, wind put out less than 10% of its nameplate capacity at times of peak demand. That's according to AEMO. Saying solar is the cheapest doesn't take into account the actual cost of running a grid off it. Is that your job, to think about the cost of running the entire grid using wind and solar? Do you think of the consequences to the grid?
Senator, ARENA, as the Renewable Energy Agency, is most concerned with the technical possibilities for the future. What kinds of technologies are going to be required to provide renewable energy in greater and greater shares into the electricity system and then beyond the electricity system. So we're concerned primarily with the technologies. We're proving that up through many of the things we're doing, particularly around the work we're doing in storage and demand flexibility. We're obviously trying to drive down the cost of solar even further so that those bulk electrons are even cheaper. It's not ARENA's job to do system modelling or to, in any granular way, figure out the cost structures of the market. That is done by others. However, having said that, we are aware of much of the work that's been done, and we're very encouraged by the possibility of having a large percentage of our system run by renewable energy at no more costly than what it is today to run the current system. Much of the modelling at an 80–90% share of renewable energy proves that out. So
no more than today? I thought the promise from the government was less than today.
I said no more than today in terms of the modelling for very high shares of renewable energy into the 90–95% range.
You know, the number one thing that's given us our standard of living, our longer lifestyles, has been cheap energy since the start of the Industrial Revolution. Yet no one I talk to from renewable energy seems to think it's their job. And it appears to me we're about to drive off a cliff, but because no one's thinking about it. We've got instances where massive solar and wind generation industrial facilities are not connected to the grid because of this rush into solar and wind.
Senator Roberts, you are incorrect that it is not anyone's job to think about how the system functions.
No, I didn't say that there's no one's job. I'm pleased we're about to hear that there may be someone who's going to do it, but I've said no one I've found.
Okay, well, I think we have spoken with you before about the Australian Energy Market Operator that releases regularly information to the market about the operation of the national electricity market. And that includes an integrated system plan, which involves describing the least cost pathway for the development of the national electricity market. It also involves releasing regular statements of opportunities which describe for investors the likely opportunities for investments in a range of asset classes. And it also releases quarterly market updates, and all of those might be documents that are of interest to you given your interest in this area of policy.
So is anyone anticipating what will happen to our grid as we increase solar and wind?
The role of the Australian Energy Market Operator is to contemplate the future technology pathways for the grid and to understand both the market design issues and any engineering issues that might arise. And again, because of your interest in this policy area, I would encourage you to engage with some of the materials that they produce.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you very much.